The phone rang just past midnight. The sound sliced through the silence like a scream in the dark. Michael Turner jolted awake, his heart pounding against his ribs. The house was quiet, too quiet, except for the echoing vibration of the old landline phone in the hallway. His first thought was Mom. She'd been in the hospital 2 days ago. Maybe it was the nurse. Maybe it was the call he'd been dreading. But when he picked it up, the voice on the other end wasn't familiar. It was soft, trembling, yet oddly calm. "Is this Michael Turner?" the voice asked. Michael froze. Something about the tone, the way the man spoke his name, carried both pain and purpose. "Who is this?" he managed to whisper. There was a pause, long enough for Michael to hear the faint sound of breathing. Then came the reply that would change everything. "I think you knew my son." His name was David Miller. Michael felt his throat tighten instantly. David. A name he hadn't spoken aloud in 12 years. Before we go further, friends, if you believe in kindness, forgiveness, and second chances, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness. These stories are made to remind us that even strangers can change our lives in ways we never expect. David Miller. The name brought back a flood of memories Michael had buried deep inside. They'd been best friends once, inseparable in high school, dreamers who planned to see the world together. But a single moment had torn them apart forever. It was the winter of 2013. Snow had blanketed the small town of Springfield, and the roads were slick with ice. Michael remembered every detail of that night, the laughter, the music, the smell of cheap beer. He and David had been celebrating after winning a local basketball championship. They were young, careless, and stupid. David had offered to drive them home even though he'd had too much to drink. Michael didn't stop him. He should have. That decision haunted him every single day since. They never made it home. The car skidded on black ice, crashed into a guardrail, and spun into a ditch. Michael survived with a broken leg and a few scars. David didn't. The police said it was instant. But for Michael, it was anything but instant. It was a slow, agonizing lifetime of guilt replaying that night over and over. He tried to reach out to David's parents after the accident, but they refused to speak to him. Letters went unanswered, phone calls unreturned. So, he stopped trying. He moved away, changed jobs, changed everything about his life, but not his guilt. That stayed. It was the shadow that never left. And now, 12 years later, the father of the boy he'd lost was on the phone. The man's voice shook slightly as he continued. "I don't know why I called. Maybe I just needed to hear your voice. I found your number in David's old notebook." Michael's hand trembled as he sat down on the edge of his bed. "Mr. Miller," he whispered, his throat tight. "I'm so sorry. I've wanted to say that for years, but I didn't think you'd ever want to hear from me." The man sighed softly. "For a long time, I didn't. I was angry, at you, at God, at everything. I lost my boy that night, and I blamed you for it. But lately," his voice broke. "Lately, I've been going through David's things. His photos, his journals, his trophies. And I found a letter, addressed to you." Michael's chest tightened. "A letter?" "Yes. It was never sent. He must have written it the day before the accident. I thought, maybe you should have it." There was silence between them, thick and heavy, filled with the ghosts of all that had been left unsaid. "I don't know if I deserve it," Michael said finally. Mr. Miller replied, "Deserve has nothing to do with it. My son cared about you. And I think, maybe it's time for both of us to stop running from that night." 2 days later, Michael drove back to Springfield. A place he swore he'd never return to. The town hadn't changed much. The diner on the corner still had the same flickering neon sign. The church steeple still towered over Main Street. But to Michael, it all felt like stepping into a photograph, one that had been left out in the rain too long. Mr. Miller lived in a small, weathered house at the edge of town. The porch light was on, casting a faint glow over the peeling paint. When Michael walked up the steps, his knees nearly gave out. He expected anger, blame, maybe even hatred. But when the door opened, what he saw instead was an old man, weary, gentle, eyes filled with years of grief but also something else, acceptance. They stood there for a long moment, just looking at each other. No words. Just the heavy silence of two lives intertwined by tragedy. Finally, Mr. Miller gestured for him to come inside. The living room was lined with photographs, David as a child, David holding a basketball, David with his high school team. And there, on the mantel, was a picture of the two of them, Michael and David, laughing, arms slung around each other's shoulders. Mr. Miller handed him a small, folded envelope. He wrote this the day before it happened. I couldn't bring myself to open it until last week. Michael's hands shook as he took it. The paper was worn, the ink slightly smudged, as if touched by tears. He hesitated, then slowly unfolded it. The handwriting was unmistakable. Hey Mike. I know we've had our differences lately, but I just wanted to say thanks, for being my best friend, my brother, my family. I don't say it enough, but you're the one person who's always believed in me. Life's been rough lately, but when we're together, I feel like anything's possible. I hope we never lose that. Your brother always. David. The words hit Michael like a wave. His vision blurred as tears fell onto the paper. He couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. The guilt, the sorrow, the years of silence all collapsed into that single moment. Mr. Miller placed a trembling hand on his shoulder. You've carried that pain long enough, son. Maybe it's time to let it go. They sat there in silence for a long time. Two broken souls, healing together, slowly, painfully, but finally. Over the next few weeks, Michael visited Springfield often. He helped Mr. Miller with chores around the house, fixed the old fence, mowed the lawn, even brought him groceries. The visits became less about guilt and more about connection, about rebuilding something good out of something broken. One afternoon, while cleaning out David's room, Michael found an old shoebox under the bed. Inside were photos of their high school days, championship medals, ticket stubs, little notes they'd written to each other. But what caught his eye most was a list titled, Things to Do with Mike. It had 10 bullet points. Road trip to the Grand Canyon. Go skydiving. Start a small business. Help someone who's struggling. Change someone's life. Half of them were crossed out. The rest, unfinished. Michael smiled through his tears. For the first time in years, he felt like he knew what he needed to do. Months passed. Michael decided to leave his city job and return permanently to Springfield. He opened a small community center in David's name, the Miller Turner Foundation, a place where teenagers could come after school, play sports, get tutoring, or just talk. He wanted to give them what he and David never had, guidance before mistakes, hope before regret. At the opening ceremony, Mr. Miller stood beside him, eyes glistening with pride. David would have loved this, he whispered. Michael smiled. He's the reason I did it. As the crowd applauded, Michael looked up at the sky, bright blue, calm, endless. For the first time since that night, the weight on his heart lifted. He whispered softly, I'm sorry, David. But I hope you know I never stopped missing you. And I'll spend the rest of my life making it right. Sometimes life gives us second chances, not through miracles, but through forgiveness. And sometimes, it's the voice of a stranger that reminds us of who we were meant to be all along. That midnight call didn't just reconnect two broken men, it rebuilt a bridge that tragedy had burned to ashes. So, friends, if this story touched your heart, if you believe that kindness and forgiveness can heal even the deepest wounds, please like, share, comment, and subscribe to MM Kindness. Your support helps us spread stories that remind the world of the power of compassion. And before you go, I have one special request. Speech balloon, comment below and tell us, have you ever received a call that changed your life? Because sometimes, the smallest call can awaken the loudest part of your heart.